Your support means the world to us and helps us continue sharing these inspiring journeys. Hit the notification bell too, so you'll be notified whenever a new story is released. Thank you for being part of our growing community. Emily's earliest memories were not filled with bedtime stories or warm embraces, but with the echo of slammed doors and the hollow silence that followed arguments. Her father, once a figure she had desperately sought approval from, became a shadow in the corners of her childhood. He was present, yet absent. A man weighed down by his own struggles, anger and regrets, unable or unwilling to connect with the little girl who needed him most. At first, Emily tried to win his affection. She brought home perfect report cards, won spelling bees, and cleaned her room without being asked. Every achievement was a desperate plea for recognition, a silent cry of "see me, love me." But his praise was rare and his criticisms sharp. Over time, the disappointment hardened into something colder: indifference. Her teenage years were even worse. By then, Emily had stopped trying. The house felt like a war zone. Words were weapons, and silence was a shield. Her father would come home late, smelling of whiskey and exhaustion, speaking in clipped sentences, or not at all. On the nights he did lash out, it was with words that left invisible bruises. Words like ungrateful, stupid, or just like your mother. Labels that Emily wore for years, even after she left home. Her mother, though kind-hearted, was overwhelmed. She tried to keep the peace, often minimizing the damage, whispering reassurances to Emily after the storms had passed, but her quiet apologies could never truly erase the pain. Emily learned early that survival meant building walls, thick, high, and impenetrable. When she finally left for college, she left everything behind. The small, crumbling house, the bitter dinners, the hollow holidays. She didn't look back. Letters from home went unanswered. Calls from her mother were brief and surface level. Her father never called, not once. A part of her was relieved. Another part, the part she buried deepest, ached with the kind of longing she didn't dare admit even to herself. The years that followed gave Emily the freedom she had craved, but also left her with a gnawing emptiness she couldn't fully explain. She became fiercely independent, building a successful life in a distant city, surrounding herself with friends and colleagues who admired her strength. Yet beneath the polished surface, old wounds festered. Trust didn't come easily. Love felt conditional. Vulnerability was a threat. She told herself she was better off without him, that some relationships were better left dead and buried. But no matter how far she ran, the ghost of her father lingered, in the way she flinched at sudden anger, in the way she struggled to believe she was ever truly enough. Forgiveness was a foreign concept. It wasn't even something she considered. To forgive him, she thought, would be to excuse him, and nothing could excuse the years of pain and silence. And so, the wall remained, solid, unshakable, necessary, or so she believed. The years rolled on, carrying Emily further and further from the broken home she had once escaped. In the beginning, the distance felt like a kind of freedom. She built a new life meticulously, like a house of cards she was determined would never collapse. She graduated with honors, secured a stable job, and eventually bought a small apartment of her own. From the outside, she seemed to have everything under control, polished, successful, and perfectly composed. But success, she soon realized, could not silence the quiet ache inside her. Whenever birthdays came around or holidays drew near, a strange emptiness settled in her chest. While her friends talked about family traditions and weekend visits with their parents, Emily found excuses. She was busy, she said, deadlines, travel plans, anything to avoid the conversations that would scratch at the surface of her carefully managed life. She became an expert at deflecting questions, smiling when she needed to, and quickly changing the subject. She dated occasionally, even fell in love once, but relationships always ended the same way, quietly, painfully. She kept people at arm's length, terrified that if they truly saw her, they would leave just as her father had, emotionally if not physically. Vulnerability was a door she refused to open. Love, she believed, was not something you could trust. Her mother called from time to time. Their conversations were short, polite exchanges about the weather or work. Occasionally her mother would mention her father, slipping his name into the conversation like a test balloon. Emily would go cold immediately, steering the subject elsewhere until her mother got the message. In her heart, Emily felt guilty for the distance she maintained, but she couldn't risk reopening old wounds. There were moments, late at night, when memories crept in despite her best efforts. She would remember small, unexpected things. The way her father used to lift her onto his shoulders when she was very small. The way he laughed before life wore him down. These glimpses of a different time, before everything soured, made the ache sharper. They were a cruel reminder that there had once been love, or at least the possibility of it. Sometimes she wondered if he thought about her, if he regretted the years of silence. But then she would push the thought away. Regret, she told herself, changed nothing. It didn't erase the damage. It didn't fill the hollow spaces he had left behind. Emily had made peace with the idea that some stories never got a happy ending. Some doors stayed closed forever. She had accepted it, or so she believed, a small, stubborn hope that maybe one day something might change. She didn't know it yet, but that day was closer than she could have imagined. It was a grey, drizzling afternoon when the letter arrived. Emily almost missed it, buried between bills and advertisements. The envelope looked so ordinary, but as she shuffled through the mail, her hand paused. Her name was written in a shaky, unfamiliar scrawl. No return address, no indication of who had sent it. Something about the uneven handwriting tugged at her, a quiet sense of unease rising in her chest. She sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Part of her didn't want to know. Part of her wanted to tear it up and pretend it had never come. But curiosity and something deeper, something she didn't want to name, won out. The letter was short, a few sentences, barely a paragraph. It was from a nursing home several towns away. Her father was there now, the staff explained, his health deteriorating rapidly. He had asked, repeatedly, if they could contact her, if she would come. Emily read the words over and over, each time feeling a different emotion crash over her. Confusion, anger, sadness, even a flicker of guilt. She hadn't heard his voice in decades, hadn't seen his face in all that time. In her mind, he had become a fixed image, cold, distant, unchanging. But now he was an old man, alone and dying, and he was asking for her. For the rest of the evening, the letter sat on the table like a living thing. Emily tried to distract herself, cleaning, scrolling through her phone, answering work emails. But her mind kept circling back, like a bird trapped inside a room. Memories she had worked so hard to bury surfaced without permission. She remembered standing at the window as a little girl, waiting for his car to pull into the driveway, believing that maybe today would be different. She remembered the crushing disappointment each time he didn't come home when he said he would. She remembered birthdays missed, school plays unattended, the hollow ache of wanting a father who never seemed to want her back. Why now, she thought bitterly. Why, after all this time? And yet another thought whispered just beneath her anger. What if this is the only chance you'll ever get? Sleep didn't come easily that night. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a child again, torn between anger and longing, between protecting herself and daring to hope. The idea of seeing him again terrified her. What if he hadn't changed? What if he still saw her as a disappointment? Worse, what if he truly regretted everything and she realized too late that she had missed the chance to heal something broken? By morning, the decision was made, though she didn't remember exactly when. Maybe it was somewhere in the middle of the night, when loneliness wrapped around her like a second skin. She would go. Not for him, she told herself. For herself. The nursing home smelled faintly of antiseptic and something softer, like wilted flowers. Emily walked down the narrow hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if she were moving through water. She clutched the strap of her purse tightly, wishing for something, anything, to anchor her. At the end of the hallway, an attendant smiled gently and pointed to a door slightly ajar. "He's awake," she said softly. Emily nodded, too nervous to trust her voice. She stood in front of the door for a moment, her hand hovering above the handle, summoning the courage she wasn't sure she had. When she finally pushed the door open, the room seemed startlingly small. A single bed, a nightstand cluttered with tissues and half-finished crossword puzzles, and a window letting in a thin strip of grey light. And there, propped up against a few pillows, was her father. He looked smaller than she remembered, thinner, frailer, almost translucent. His hair was nearly all white, his skin lined with the map of a hard little life. When he turned and saw her, his eyes widened with something like disbelief, and then, unmistakably, hope. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Time hung suspended between them, stretched thin by decades of silence and pain. Finally, he spoke, his voice rasping like dry leaves. "Emily," he said, the word crumbling at the edges. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Hi, Dad." The word felt strange in her mouth, too big, too full of memories she wasn't sure she wanted to remember. Tears sprang into his eyes almost immediately. He struggled to sit up straighter, wincing with the effort. "I didn't think you'd come," he whispered. "I almost didn't," she admitted, her voice sharper than she intended. He flinched slightly, and for a second Emily hated herself for it. But the hurt, the anger, it was still there, just under her skin, refusing to be ignored. "I was a terrible father," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I was selfish and angry, and I didn't know how to be better. I didn't know how to love right. I'm so sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry for all of it." Hearing the words she had wanted for so long, she found she didn't feel the way she expected. There was no sudden rush of vindication, no satisfaction, only a deep, aching sadness. For him, for herself, for all the years they had lost. Tears blurred her vision, and she sat down carefully in the chair beside his bed. For a long time they just sat there, the silence between them no longer a wall, but a bridge slowly being built plank by plank. "I don't know if I can forgive everything," she said quietly. "But I'm here, and for now, that was enough." Her father reached out, his hand trembling, and Emily took it, hesitant at first, then firmer. His skin was warm, fragile, human. For the first time in years, she let herself feel it. Not the hurt, not the anger, but the bittersweet possibility of healing. The days that followed were slow and delicate, like walking across a frozen lake, unsure if the ice would hold. Emily visited often, at first out of obligation, then out of something softer she didn't yet dare name. Each visit peeled back another layer of anger, revealing the complicated, bruised love that had been buried underneath. Her father told stories she had never heard before, about his own childhood, about the disappointments and fears he had carried without knowing how to put them down. He spoke with a rawness that surprised her, stripping away the proud, angry man she remembered and revealing someone heartbreakingly human, a man who had made terrible mistakes, but who, in the end, understood the cost of them. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they sat in silence, simply existing in the same space, no longer enemies, no longer strangers. Forgiveness, Emily realized, was not a single moment, a dramatic confession, or a tearful embrace. It was 1,000 small choices made over and over. To listen instead of accuse, to remember without bitterness, to offer compassion even when old wounds begged for retaliation. It didn't excuse the past, nothing could. It didn't erase the missed birthdays, the broken promises, the lonely years. But forgiveness wasn't about pretending the pain hadn't mattered. It was about deciding that it didn't have to control her anymore. One afternoon, as she sat by his bedside watching him drift in and out of sleep, Emily thought about the girl she used to be. The one who had waited at the window. The one who had packed her suitcase with shaking hands and sworn she would never look back. That girl had every right to be angry, every right to protect herself. But the woman she had become understood something deeper. Healing didn't come from keeping walls high and heart hardened. Healing came from releasing the anger that had become a prison. When her father woke, he smiled weakly and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for coming back," he whispered. Emily smiled through tears she didn't bother to hide. "I think I needed this as much as you did." In the weeks that followed, Emily noticed a lightness within herself, something she hadn't felt in years. The tightness in her chest, the reflexive need to guard herself. It was loosening. She found herself laughing more easily, sleeping more peacefully. The chains of the past were breaking, link by link. When her father eventually passed, it was peaceful. Emily was there, holding his hand, whispering words of comfort. She didn't feel the crushing guilt she had once feared. Instead, she felt a quiet, solemn gratitude, not for the pain they had shared, but for the healing they had found, even if it came at the very end. In forgiving him, Emily had found something she hadn't even known she was searching for. She had found herself. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear the next part, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We have many more heartfelt stories coming your way. Stories about family, forgiveness, and finding hope after hardship. By subscribing, you'll never miss an update and will always be the first to hear our newest videos.